Welcome back to For the Road, and welcome back to the 1964 Giulia Sprint GT, my old daily driver. Now, I said in last week's episode that I was going to drive this car every day, and I've been doing that for a week, and I've really enjoyed it. I forgot how much I missed this car. This car feels like home to me. Nothing else feels quite as good. Just sitting in this thing just feels right to me. This is my for life car. However, the engine is not in very good shape. I thought maybe it just had some carburetor issues and some cam timing issues. However, it's been pushing an incredible amount of oil out the breather on the back of the block, which is just down the back. You can see it there. Yeah, so that's the breather there. It's been pushing a lot of oil out of there, which means it has quite high crankcase pressure. So I'm going to test to see if it has a broken piston ring, which I'm pretty sure it does, because when I was in Sudan and Egypt and, out there where it's really hot and the fuel quality is quite low, this car pinged like crazy on that really bad fuel. And I think that pinging has given it quite a lot of valve damage and probably a broken piston ring. I suspect it's on piston number 1. As I said last week, I do have a full engine rebuild plan for this car, because this engine, the block's really good. However, the head was almost scrap when I got it. And when I rebuilt it, the compression ratio was just too high and it pinged on the bad fuel. And that pinging is a really terrible thing for an engine. Basically, what happens is the fuel, low octane fuel, is a lot less stable than high octane fuel. And it detonates while the piston is still on the way up. It's called pre-detonation or pinging. And it just sounds like a rattle, but what it's doing is just putting incredible force on the top of the pistons and the rings, and it's really bad. And it makes it run super hot, and it smokes. So I wouldn't be surprised when I pull the head off this thing that it's got burnt valves and broken piston rings and all sorts of stuff. But right now I'm going to have a look and see if we can determine which one of these cylinders has a broken ring. Obviously, first things first, when you want to do a compression test, is get the engine warm, not hot, not cold, just nice and warm. So I had it running a little bit this morning. And I'm going to have to pull all the spark plugs out, obviously, disconnect the ignition, disconnect the fuel, block up the fuel line so it doesn't pump fuel everywhere when you crank it over. And we'll put a compression dial in it and see what's going on. Right, everything's disconnected and the plugs are out. Obviously, just make sure that the ignition leads are not touching the fan, because that's going to turn when we crank the motor over. What I'm going to do is use this compression gauge to test the dry compression in each cylinder first. I'm going to run a dry test, which means just crank it over as it is and see what the compression is, and then I'm going to put a little bit of oil down into each cylinder. The theory is that the oil will act as a little wet seal on the piston ring. So if there's any damage to the rings or the wall, you'll see a spike in your compression. You'll see a big difference between the wet and dry readings. So let's install this and check out what each cylinder is doing. I'm not terribly optimistic, to be honest. Right, so I've run the dry test, cylinders 4 back through to 1, and the compression isn't bad. It's not brilliant either. I've got a high on cylinder 2 of 175 pounds per square inch, but cylinder 1, as I suspect, is quite low. It's about 158, 159 pounds per square inch, which is about a 10% difference between cylinder 2, which is the highest. So that's kind of borderline, indicates it needs a rebuild. That's, yeah, it's quite a big difference. 10% between cylinders. It's not great. Anyway, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of oil down each cylinder, which will act as a seal on the rings, and we'll see if any of these values jumps significantly. I'll know that there's a problem with the rings or the cylinder wall. So you can do the wet test and see how that goes. Well, the results are in, and it's not good at all. I was suspecting that maybe one cylinder had a problem, but it seems like it's all of them. Across all 4 cylinders, there are quite high increases when you do a wet test versus a dry test. And you expect it to increase a little bit, but not by 21.5%. That's quite bad. Overall, they were quite far off from each other, especially cylinder number 1, but the increase in when you add a little bit of oil means it becomes quite obvious why this car's blowing oil out of it, because every single cylinder is letting pressure pass the rings. So the crankcase pressure must be really, really high. And there's a part of me that thinks maybe an option is to just block off that and get a later breather off the cam cover or something like that, and then just keep driving it. But this engine just doesn't feel very good, and I'm worried that I'm going to blow it up. But I really need to keep this block. I have another head for it and all sorts of stuff. I can do a full engine rebuild on this, but if I blow up this block, that's going to leave me in a bit of trouble. So my dream of daily driving this car again has kind of been shot down, because this engine's on its way out. And I think this is to do with the pinging. I mean, this car pinged ever since I put bad fuel in it when I was on the road in North Africa, and that it just pinged really badly, and it never really stopped after that. No matter how much I tried to tune it and adjust cam timing, ignition, and fuel, it would ping really easily. And I think all that pre-ignition that pre-detonation has now taken its toll, and this thing needs a rebuild. Well, and it's not a disaster. Engines can be rebuilt as long as you don't destroy the block. So, unfortunately, I can't keep daily driving this in that state, but I am going to start daily driving the TI once again, because I really, really love this car, and this thing just runs perfectly. It's so sweet. This week, my new door is arriving, so I can actually get the TI out of here, put the TI Super wheels back on it, and keep driving it. Because, shame, the GT is a little bit sad, and it really needs a good engine rebuild. Also this week, because the doors are arriving, the GDV is going off to the panel shop. We're going to sort out all these horrible door gaps, going to sort out the rust in the floor. Yeah, there's a lot going on this week. So, yeah. I'm a bit sad about the state of my GT. This is my favorite car, and I'm a bit sad that I can't really drive it anymore. Yeah. So this has just been a very short episode to find out what was going wrong with the GT. So join us again next week on For the Road, when we're getting back into like the proper build stuff, back into building the GTV, and I think we'll even start with the build on this car as well, because this one's not going anywhere. Engine's screwed. So thanks for watching For the Road. Check me out on Instagram. That's Jethro James Bronner, and next time you see me, I think we'll be starting the process of rebuilding this car, because it is rather tragic, and there's no point in having it just sitting here unused. Thanks for watching For the Road. I'll see you guys next week.